After watching a video about the failure of Starbound, I wanted to try my hand at making a procedurally generated space exploration game. Only, with my somewhat limited skill set, I'm not here to overpromise. I knew it needed to be a relatively simple idea with a replayable game loop that utilizes development methods I understand. So I opened up PyCharm and imported random. Whilst at first the idea of procedural generation sounds difficult, all you need is a set of rules and probabilities. For example, in this scene, there's a 25 to 75% floor tile screen coverage chance, and a certain chance that a plant will spawn on a floor tile. This is all handled in one script that generates random scenes each time it launches. And this brings me to the game idea. Starship Sprout, a procedurally generated space botany game. The idea is simple. Collect plants on alien planets, grow new plants from them, and use them to fuel your ship and stave off hunger. There's much more to it, but I'll reveal additional details as development progresses. Right now, let's focus on the initial tech demo. So we have our rudimentary planet generation system. Now we need a way for the player to access this scene and explore new planets. For that, we need a spaceship, as represented here by the word fly. Next, I decided to have an infinite amount of planets fall from the top of the screen in different sizes and colours. Initially, I thought the planet objects could handle the planet generation, so the properties could be determined beforehand. But this seemed unnecessarily complicated, and I'd have to apply even more rules to the generation script. So I decided to just have them act as a trigger point that initiates the planet generation script when they collide with the ship. Now I had a working planet generation script, the ability to collect plants, and a working spaceship. Here I really began to see the shape of the gameplay loop take place, and with some additional features, I can see this resulting in something fun and replayable. However, as of yet, there's no way to use the plants you've collected. For this, I need to make a ship interior. When the player presses E in the space scene, I wanted them to be taken to an interior view. Until this point, I could get away with relying on randomly generated scenes. But for the interior, I needed a more specific design. This meant using tile maps, which, let me tell you, in Pygame, is a pain in the arse. Though I was able to quickly create the scene, collisions proved difficult. I managed to get the wall tile collisions to work, but this caused collision issues elsewhere in the game. So I asked my glamorous assistant, Debbie McGee, for help, and we were eventually able to get the issues sorted. The key issue was that I was trying to create collision effects by referencing image assets, outlined in the tile map JSON, instead of tile numbers. At this point, the basics of the game were starting to come together. The player could visit randomly generated planets by flying through space and enter the spaceship interior view. But this game requires players to keep on top of two key things: ship fuel and player hunger. This meant adding some UI features to monitor these parameters. It was pretty late when I got to this feature, so I once again wheeled out DebDeb. Now the player bar decreases every 0.5 seconds and the ship fuel depletes whenever the player moves the ship in space. What happens when these stats get to zero? Well, that's something I'll add later. After getting the basic stat UI in place, I needed to add an inventory system. I opted for an icon on screen instead of the traditional Minecraft-style system. For now, it works and it's just easier. As you can see from the fast-moving stars, I got tired of working on actual features and distracted myself with some fun visuals. Now, across all scenes, stars fall. I'm really pleased with this effect. It immediately adds another layer of depth to the game. Speaking of games, still, there really isn't one here. Sure, you can cycle through the three main scenes and collect plants, but you can't do anything with them. It was time to add a plant analyzer, whereby players can add their alien plants and receive refined plants with certain properties to enable them to decrease hunger and increase ship fuel. This was an absolute ball ache. At points I wanted to cry. Not only was it a nightmare to get the player to collide with the plant analyzer tile, but creating interactions was even harder. Then when I did eventually get it to work, the progress bar I added didn't work at all. I wanted the player to have to wait 2 seconds for every plant they loaded into the analyzer. And I approached this by offloading the inventory info into a holding JSON file, which would allow the plant analyzer to monitor its progress. Sound unnecessarily complicated? It was, and I was pulling my hair out. I even started to question my decision to use my beloved Pygame. But after stepping away for a while, I realised that I was looking at it wrong. I had it so the player always offloaded their entire plant inventory to the analyzer each time, meaning there was no real need to count down per each plant or have a holding JSON. Instead, I could just have the player trigger a timer that, when finished, delivered refined plants to their inventory. This also didn't work. I now felt sick to my stomach with frustration, so I decided to leave it there before I started writhing on the floor. Now, I was hoping to be able to get a tech demo done for this video, but with the setbacks I've faced, I think I'm going to have to call the video here. I'm going to go rock back and forth in a dark corner for a bit. It's always the simple things that cause the biggest issues. But in the next video, I will have it working, and we'll start to explore the visual style. Besides, I'm actually quite pleased with the progress I've already made. Creating the planet generation system, for example, was surprisingly straightforward. Anyway, if you want to keep up to date with my progress on Starship Sprout, go ahead and subscribe or join my Discord for priority access to game testing and to have your say on future features. You've been watching Jimbo's Lab. Thanks for joining me.